My thoughts are with Mr. Camara as well as with the injured police officer. In the last weeks, we've seen that the number of new cases across the country has continued to drop. This is good news, but we can't let down our guard. There's still much work to be done with new variants across the world that we're now seeing here in Canada. We must do everything we can to protect ourselves and to protect our neighbors and friends, but there's still work to be done. Well, many provinces are getting ready to ease up on certain public health measures. I'd like to give you an update on the various ways that we are fighting COVID-19. Let's start by talking about vaccines.
As soon as possible. And that's exactly why we're focused on vaccines. The temporary shipment delays that many countries are facing right now are a hurdle, but they're one that we were ready for. We knew that short-term delays would be a possibility, so we planned accordingly. But I hear it from all Canadians right now. People are worried. People are tired of this pandemic. They want to know when this winter is going to be over. They want to know when they can go back to everything they've done before. They want to know mostly when their grandparents are going to be safe, when the vaccines are going to come. That's why there's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of noise going on right now. That's why I want to reassure Canadians that we are on track. In late November, we stood before Canadians and we said that we were confident that we were going to get 6 million doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine by Q1 of 2021. That's the first 3 months of 2021, January, February, and March. We are very much on track to getting those 6 million doses of Pfizer and Moderna by the end of March, as we predicted in November. I speak almost every week with the CEOs of these vaccine companies, and they have assured me that they will meet their obligations, their contractual obligations, to deliver 6 million doses to Canadians by the end of March, which means we are still very much on track for 20 million doses in the spring from Pfizer and Moderna, with more vaccine companies in the process of approval right now, and we will get everyone vaccinated by September. Now, a friend of mine actually shared me the story of how they felt a few days ago when their elderly parents in a long-term care home here in Ottawa got their second dose of the vaccine. He said it was a surprise just how much of a relief it was to suddenly not be afraid for your loved ones. That's a feeling that thousands upon thousands of Canadians are getting right across the country, but we need to get to millions. I know how tired we all are. I know how anxious we are to see our loved ones safe, to see life returning to normal. We feel it too. That's why we are working every single day to make sure that as many vaccines as possible come into Canada as quickly as possible. And yes, the turbulence week over week that we're seeing is of concern, and we're watching it closely and we're staying on it. But let me reassure people, we are still very much on track, as promised, to get those 6 million doses by the end of March, because that's what the vaccine company CEOs keep telling me. And I'm happy to reassure Canadians on that. We are focused on keeping you and your family safe every step of the way. Our team is in constant contact with the top people involved, as well as with our counterparts in Europe. Over the past weeks, I've personally spoken with the CEOs of Pfizer and Moderna, and this week I was on the phone with Pascal Soriot from AstraZeneca. They assured me that they will fulfill all their commitments to Canada. We've worked around the clock to negotiate one of the world's most diverse vaccine portfolio. That's how we have assured more potential doses per person than any other country. In addition to Pfizer and Moderna, 3 other companies have submitted their vaccines for review by Health Canada: AstraZeneca, Janssen, and Novavax. This review process is independent and has the very highest standards to make sure that every vaccine approved in Canada is both safe and effective. On vaccines, I also want to say a few words about COVAX, which is another important part of our overall plan. When wealthier countries invest in COVAX, half of that funding is for doses at home, and the other half is to buy doses for low and middle-income countries. In other words, our contribution was always intended to access vaccine doses for Canadians as well as to support lower-income countries. Through COVAX, pending Health Canada approval, we will receive at least 1.9 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine before the end of June. That's in addition to the 20 million doses we've already secured from AstraZeneca. Canada is committed to making sure that the rest of the world doesn't get left behind when it comes to vaccination. That's why we are one of the world's top donors to COVAX. To beat this virus anywhere, we have to beat it everywhere. In addition to COVAX, we've also contributed to other programs specifically designed to help lower-income countries get access to vaccines.
Yesterday, we had our 26th First Ministers meeting with the provinces and territories. And of course, we spoke of vaccines. With regard to the Pfizer vaccine, the number of doses delivered weekly will increase in mid-February. If we count Pfizer and Moderna together, we will receive 6 million doses in total by the end of March, as we've been saying to Canadians since the end of November. We are also preparing for a faster rollout, which will begin in April as expected. In spring, we are expecting to receive 20 million doses from the 2 vaccines that have already been authorized. And this number will be adjusted upwards as we add other vaccine candidates that are currently being studied by Health Canada. Despite the short-term temporary issues that are also affecting other countries, our plan is a solid one, and we will stay the course to meet our goals. Any Canadian who wishes a vaccine will be able to have one by September.
Last week, we also announced new measures for international travel. All international flights are now limited to 4 major airports: Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. With the support of our airline industry, all flights to and from Mexico and the Caribbean have also been suspended until April 30th. As I told the premiers during our 26th meeting yesterday, our government's priority has always been to protect Canadians. That's exactly what we're continuing to do. The mandatory PCR testing at the airport and the new 3-day quarantine measures will be in place as soon as possible. In addition to these new rules for flying, we're also looking at ways to further strengthen our land border measures. We'll have more to announce on this soon. Pendant que les vaccins continuent d'arriver,
while vaccines continue to arrive, we must absolutely examine, or make use of rather, other tools that are available to stop this virus. Testing must play a crucial role in our strategy, particularly since cases are beginning to drop and provinces are thinking of reopening. Whether in schools, long-term care homes, or workplaces, rapid tests will be an efficient way to prevent outbreaks. I continue the provinces and territories. I continue to strongly encourage the provinces and territories to use them. For Canadian safeties and for the economy as well, we must continue to work to ensure that the number of new cases continues to drop. This morning, we learned that the Canadian economy lost 213,000 jobs in January, mainly part-time jobs in the retail sales sector. Since the beginning of this pandemic, our government has acted quickly to directly support Canadians, workers, and small businesses through programs such as wage subsidies, commercial rent support, or changes we made to the employment insurance regime. We are not letting you down. If you would like to know about the support, you can go to the site canada.ca coronavirus for more information on our different support measures. We will continue to be there for you. If you've lost your job, we're thinking of you, but we have means to help you. We are working tirelessly to provide vaccines as soon as possible. We know that spring is on its way and things will improve. In the meantime, we are here for you.
No matter where you live, our focus is on keeping you and your community safe. On that note, today, I can announce that we have approved a request for federal assistance for Pongassi First Nation in northern Manitoba. The Canadian Armed Forces will begin deployment as soon as possible. They'll be arriving on Saturday at the latest and will be there until February 10th. Once they're on the ground, members of the forces will be providing logistical support, transporting goods and medical supplies, and conducting wellness checks. Just as they have since the start of this crisis, our women and men in uniform are stepping up to the plate. They're doing a great job and making a real positive difference for the people who need it most. Over the last year, we've seen people across the country come together to support each other through this incredibly difficult time. After all, that's just who we are. In Canada, we just help each other out. We learn from our differences. We celebrate diversity and compassion. These Canadian values are what make us stronger as a country and as a democracy, and we will always stand up to protect them. On Wednesday, Minister Blair announced that 13 new groups are now listed as terrorist entities, including ideologically motivated extremist groups like the Proud Boys. These decisions were made after thorough information gathering by Canada's security and intelligence officials, often over months and years. To be listed, a group must meet a high legal threshold. The listing can then help stop their dangerous activities and facilitate criminal investigations and prosecutions. Among other things, this means that under the law, it is now a crime to deal knowingly with the property or finances of these hateful groups. We will continue to do whatever it takes to keep Canadians safe. We will continue to fight hate and violence online, and we will continue to protect our communities and our places of worship. Just last week, I spoke to my friend Rabbi Adam Shire, whose synagogue in Montreal was recently vandalized with anti-Semitic graffiti. He mentioned that enhanced security measures made possible by our security infrastructure program, as well as extremely alert security guards, meant that the alleged perpetrator was caught quickly before he could do more serious damage. Violent extremism has no place in our country. We will always stand up to groups and individuals who use violence to target our fellow Canadians or to attack our democratic systems.
I want to wrap up today by returning to the question of our fight against COVID-19 and specifically vaccines. I know that there is a tremendous amount of anxiety, so let me repeat something. Our plan is working. I want to reassure everyone watching us from home. I know that you are impatiently waiting that everything be over with as quickly as possible. I know that you're impatiently waiting your vaccine, and I know that you are awaiting the vaccine for your grandparents in particularly. We are working tirelessly every day to get through this together. Since the very beginning, we've been here for Canadians, whether it comes to support for workers, for families, or for businesses, whether it comes to border measures, or just being there to help provinces and territories, the people in long-term care homes. We will be there for you, and we will be there with vaccines. We have negotiated for more contracts and more doses than almost any other country, and we are delivering on this plan. As I said in the month of November, we announced that in the first quarter of 2021, we would be receiving 6 million doses of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. I speak regularly with these two companies. They have reassured us and promised us that they will deliver these 6 million vaccines by the end of next month. We are on track to arrive at the end of this pandemic, and I understand that the ups and downs that we're going through week to week may be upsetting for some people, but I must reassure you, we are heading where we have promised to be by the end of next month. We'll have 20 more Pfizer and Moderna doses this spring, and we'll be adding other vaccine doses from other vaccine candidates as they are approved. We will be keeping our promise that any Canadian who wishes to do so will be able to be vaccinated by the month of September. We are going to get through this. We are continuing to work with you and for you. Summer and the months to come will be better than this winter. Thank you very much.
With a few questions from reporters, then turn back to the front yard for more questions. Operator?
Thank you, merci. La première question est de l'inaudible. La presse canadienne, la parole est à vous.
The Canadian Press, go ahead. Question. With regard to Mr. Camara, you said we have to shed light on this. Are you asking for an independent inquiry into this affair? Answer. I understand that authorities, including the Montreal mayor, Ms. Plante, are reviewing the file. Everybody has important questions about what happened to Mr. Camara. These questions will need to be answered, and I'm fully confident that the authorities will be able to do the work necessary to shed light on this situation.
As we've seen, anyone who has followed the story of what happened to Mr. Camara is really concerned about it. That's why, like the Mayor of Montreal and many others, I think there needs to be full light shone on exactly what happened there. I am confident that the responsible authorities will put in place measures to find out exactly what happened, what went wrong in this troubling situation. It's something that we all want to see.
Follow-up question. You mentioned the police that is continuing its inquiry. What about an independent inquiry? Some people believe that this incident was another example of racism. What do you think? Answer. As I've said since the very beginning, this systemic racism exists in all our institutions. And when we're talking about our police forces in particular, that it is extremely important to ensure that citizens can trust the police. I'm confident that answers to this, to all the questions that people have about this event will be found. Actions will need to be taken if there was anything done that should not have been done or not done properly. I am the MP for the riding involved where this incident took place, and as the Member of Parliament and as a Canadian, I want to have answers. and the processes are in place to provide us with answers. But I think everyone in a place of authority is very convinced that we must have answers to be able to reassure citizens so that they continue to trust and have confidence in our institutions.
It's extremely important to recognize that systemic racism, systemic discrimination exists in all our institutions. And when it comes to police services, for example, that's something that really requires a level of confidence by ordinary citizens in the integrity, in the processes, in the work being done by those institutions to counter systemic discrimination. And that's why when we call for answers as citizens, as the local MP, as I am, as Canadians, we need to be confident that those answers are going to be given clearly and based on facts. So I know the responsible authorities are very aware of the pressure that will be on them to figure out exactly what went wrong and to fully answer the questions of friends and family and citizens who are extremely worried about this troubling incident. I am certainly one who will watch closely to see the answers given on how something like this could happen.
Merci. Prochaine question. Operator.
Merci, thank you. The next question is from Ryan Tilmulty of the National Post. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, sir. You said in your opening remarks today that Canada's always expected that there would be disruptions in vaccine supply and that we had a plan for this. I guess I'm wondering, is this the plan? Was this always the plan that we would potentially go through lull periods like this with, just tens of thousands of doses arriving in Canada while other countries pull ahead?
A year ago, there was no vaccine for this new virus that was arriving and ravaging everywhere around the world. We knew that the scientific community, that pharmaceutical companies, that researchers around the world would be working extremely hard to try and both discover and then mass produce enough effective vaccines, ultimately for over 7 billion people. And that was a massive, monumental task. In Canada, we determined that we would do whatever it took, as much as we could, to ensure that Canadians got the vaccines that were so necessary as quickly as possible. And even before anyone started developing or confirming that they had vaccines, we signed vaccine contracts with 7 different potential vaccine manufacturers and ensured that Canadians have more doses per person, potentially, than any other country in the world. And we did that because we knew that there was uncertainty around which companies would develop the vaccines quickest, which vaccines would be most effective. And we knew that from developing a vaccine to actually mass producing millions and ultimately billions of doses of those vaccines would be a monumental logistical and production challenge. So we made sure that we were creating all the different pathways and relationships that would ensure that Canadians got as many doses as possible, as quickly as possible. And that included also investing in domestic capacity because, as I said many months ago, Canada does not have adequate or even much at all local domestic capacity of producing the vaccines for COVID-19, and we needed to begin developing that, and we have. But throughout, there was an understanding that there would be moments of uncertainty, there would be moments of delays in delivery and production challenges as these various companies scale up. So the plan was to make sure that we had deals with whatever companies landed vaccines first, but also that we weren't putting all our eggs in any one basket, and therefore, even as we were expecting doses in the millions from Pfizer and Moderna, who are the first companies to deliver the vaccines, we continue to speak regularly and pursue through Health Canada processes approvals of other vaccines, AstraZeneca, Janssen, Novavax. We are going to continue to work every day to ensure that as many doses as possible arrive as quickly as possible for Canadians. And that work we've done is why, just like I said last November, we are confident we are going to hit our target of 6 million doses in Canada by the end of March from Pfizer and Moderna. We're going to hit millions, tens of millions more in the spring, and we will have, as promised, every Canadian who wants a vaccine vaccinated by the end of September 2021. Il y a un an, on n'avait pas de vaccin.
1 year ago, we did not have a vaccine. We knew that as a planet, we would have to develop effective vaccines against this new virus, and then produce billions of doses of these vaccines to distribute to the world population. We knew that this was a monumental challenge. And in Canada, we decided that, well, we know that diversity is a strength. We decided to seal 7 agreements with vaccine producers. At the time, we didn't know which would arrive first, which would be the most effective, which company would be able to produce the billions of doses the fastest. So from the very beginning, we diversified our vaccine portfolio. At the same time, we invested in vaccine production capacity here in Canada. We knew that this would be a long-term solution either for this pandemic or for future pandemics. As soon as we could announce to Canadians in November last year that in the first quarter of this year, we would receive 6 million Pfizer and Moderna vaccine doses rather, I am pleased to be able to say today we kept our word. We will be receiving those 6 million doses according to what the CEOs of these companies are telling us, 6 million by the end of next month. But we're not relying only on those 2 vaccines, which are very effective and which are beginning to arrive. We're also working with AstraZeneca, Janssen, Novavax, and other companies to approve their vaccines and get them here as quickly as possible. Every single day, we are working to increase the number of doses that will arrive in Canada so that we can get through this as quickly as possible. That's why we are convinced that our plan works. We will be able to meet our target for the end of March, and we will be able to vaccinate anyone who wants to be vaccinated by September 2021.
Sir, I'm wondering too about the AstraZeneca vaccine. The majority of that company's production is in India, a country with which we've had tense relations at times. I'm wondering if you're concerned about this sort of vaccine nationalism that we've seen to a degree in Europe cropping up when our AstraZeneca vaccines are set to be shipped from India.
The Health Canada processes are currently underway in terms of approval of the AstraZeneca vaccine. I spoke with the CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Soriot, just a few days ago, and he very much assured me that we are on track to receiving the 20 million doses committed to by the end of June, I believe. We're going to continue to be on track. We're going to continue to work with partners and countries around the world to not just get the vaccine doses we've signed for, but look to try and achieve more. Every country in the world is trying to get their citizens vaccinated as quickly as possible, but Canada will continue to be at the forefront, both in working with vaccine companies and ensuring that the great contracts we signed from the very beginning will continue to be respected.
One more question on the phone. Operator.
Thank you, merci. La prochaine question. The next question is from Justin Lane, freelance. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Evidently, the spending that has come out of the Government of Canada over the last year has been unprecedented. The number of contracts the Government of Canada has undertaken with suppliers, domestic and foreign, is extraordinary. Through that, the government has been reticent to reveal basic details about who's applied for funding, who's awarded it, and why they've gotten it. Do you feel like you owe a greater level of transparency to the country and to the journalists who cover your government so that they may more fulsomely figure out exactly what's going on and how these decisions are being made?
My first priority, Justin, is and always will be keeping Canadians safe and healthy and getting through this pandemic by any means possible. That's been our focus from the very, very beginning. That's why we made the commitment to be there for Canadians, whatever it took, however long it takes, and we'll continue to do that. We've reached out to boost domestic production of PPE and scientific solutions, treatments, and vaccines. We've reached out to countries around the world to ensure that we're getting the supplies we need to get through this. We're continuing and continually looking to make sure we're doing everything we can to get Canadians through this. Now, part of getting through this well is maintaining Canadians' confidence in their institutions, confidence in their government's ability to continue to deliver for them while we're asking them to do difficult things like sacrificing their weekends and their family times and their birthdays by staying at home. But that reassurance of Canadians that we are doing everything necessary to keep them safe is at the heart of what this government is focused on. And therefore, transparency as a measure of boosting confidence continues to be extremely important for this government. But every step of the way, we're always trying to focus first and foremost on delivering for Canadians right now while we're in this pandemic.
Follow-up, Justin?
Right. So, but your government has still refused to reveal details or waive confidentiality, even around some of the domestic funding decisions. In normal, in previous governments, journalists have had the power to use access information requests to get some of that information. You yourself had promised, once upon a time, to reform access to information to make it more usable by journalists, including in an interview with me 6 years ago, you promised point blank that your office would be covered, as well as your minister's offices, would be covered by access information requests. That hasn't happened. Were you lying back then, or were you naive to the realities of governing?
Justin, you may not have noticed, but over the past couple of years, we actually made significant improvements to the access to information regime. We updated it significantly, strengthened the provisions, strengthened the powers of the Information Commissioner, and we'll continue to work and respect fully the extremely important work that journalists do to shine light on what government's doing, to keep Canadians informed, and indeed to make sure that our democracy continues to work. I thank you for the work you're doing. I thank you for the pressure you keep pushing on us, because we need to continue looking to do better and increase Canadians' confidence in our democracy. We've seen what happens when leaders don't respect the media, don't believe in transparency and openness. That's why we've done more on transparency and openness than previous governments have. But as you point out, there's always more we can do.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Le gouvernement du Québec continue de vous blâmer.
The Quebec government continues to blame you with regard to vaccine procurement. They have the impression that they have a new car but no gas for it. Do you take responsibility for the disruptions that you spoke of just now? Are the provinces scapegoats? Answer: I understand that the provinces are facing tremendous challenges, whether it comes to closings, citizen fatigue, pressure on workers in the healthcare system, for example, as well as tragedies that are continuing despite everyone's best efforts in our long-term care homes. I understand there is tremendous frustration, and this is what citizens citizens feel across the country. But as I've said since the very beginning, we are here to help people, to help provinces, to help Canadians, and we are going to continue to work with the provinces. I understand rather that people are frustrated that vaccines didn't arrive yesterday. Everyone wants to be vaccinated within a week and a half, but unfortunately, global production does not allow us to do so. We made promises to Canadians in November. We promised provinces and all Canadians that we would be receiving 6 million Pfizer and Moderna vaccines by the end of next month. We are en route to do so. The CEOs of these two companies have said, yes, we will deliver. You will get your 6 million doses. It's true that from week to week, there can be challenges. The Pfizer facility in Belgium is currently updating its production line to be able to increase production by 1 million, but that's causing delays in Pfizer's deliveries. This is something that's unfortunate. Obviously, we want to have as many doses possible as quickly as possible. Every day without vaccines means that the most vulnerable people, our seniors, are more at risk. But we're doing everything we can to get those doses as quickly as possible. All the work that we're doing, that we have done to secure contracts with a number of different companies, for a large number of doses, all this will pay off, and we will be receiving hundreds of thousands of vaccines every week, millions in the spring, and everyone will be vaccinated before the end of September 2021.
Saying that you're confident that Pfizer and Moderna will deliver these 6 million doses by the end of March. I'm wondering, though, if they don't, in the contracts that you've signed with these companies, are there penalties? Are there incentives for them to deliver? Is there any recourse for Canada if they don't deliver these 6 million?
I have had direct conversations with the CEOs of both Pfizer and Moderna who have repeatedly assured me that Canada will receive those doses that we were promised, those 6 million doses, 4 million from Pfizer, 2 million from Moderna, by the end of next month. The Q1 delivery schedule was something we announced at the end of November last year. For 6 million doses of Pfizer and Moderna, and we are very much on track. Those doses will begin to accelerate and come in the hundreds of thousands in the coming weeks to ensure that we hit those targets for the end of March. But on top of that, even as we're moving forward on Pfizer and Moderna, I'm also speaking regularly with the folks at AstraZeneca. Health Canada is working on AstraZeneca, Janssen and Novavax approvals. We're working to procure different vaccines to come into Canada as quickly as possible, including through the COVAX facility, which Canada was one of the leaders of and one of the early adopters of and one of the largest investors in, to ensure that we were doing and continue to do everything we can to keep having Canadians' backs. I mean, that's the promise I made to Canadians many, many months ago, standing here in our very first press conferences. We would be there to support Canadians. We'd have your backs. Well, we did that on income supports. We did that on borders. We're doing that with support for the provinces, with the Red Cross and the Armed Forces. We're continuing to have your back every different way, including on vaccines. We know vaccines are the way we get through this. That's why every day we are working and we continue to have your backs, and we're going to reach our targets and we're going to get everyone vaccinated by the end of September.
Prime Minister Mike Blanchfield, Canadian Press. You talk about having Canadians' backs. We've seen the January jobs report this morning. You mentioned you had some comments in French we've already heard. You've talked about what you've done in the past to have Canadians' backs and how important that is. But what specifically can your government do in the future to have Canadians masked to help out in some way? Is it more rapid testing capacity? Is it more spending? What can you do? What more can you do to keep workers employed, to help those, and especially in Ontario and Quebec, who have been hit so hard while they wait for vaccines and your jobs relief to kick in? What more?
The January job numbers are difficult for families across the country who lost their jobs. We knew that the further lockdowns that provinces had to take to get the numbers down, which we're seeing right across the country, the numbers are heading in the right direction. But we're not at the end yet. We know we're going to have to continue to hang in there. But that's why from the very beginning, the federal government worked hard to make those difficult decisions by the provinces a little bit easier by being there to directly support workers who are laid off because of COVID-19, first with the CERB, now with enhanced EI. We've continued to be there for small businesses with business accounts like the CEBA that gives interest-free loans and tremendous support so small businesses can hang in there while we wait for vaccines. We knew this winter was going to be a difficult one, that we were going to have to keep being there for each other, which is why, as far back as last September, we extended our business supports, our income supports, all the way through to the end of next summer, because we knew there would be challenging times coming up. And we're going to continue every single day to look at ways to continue to support vulnerable Canadians who are being affected by this pandemic and its many, many impacts. Because that promise to be there for Canadians is one that this federal government takes extremely seriously. But 9 out of every $10, 8 or 9 out of every $10 spent on pandemic supports during this pandemic has come from the federal government, not provincial or territorial governments. We are there to support Canadians, and we will continue to be until we get through this, with income supports, with vaccines, with health measures, with the supports that people need.
Prime Minister Michael Couture with Global National. Since last we spoke to you, Global News has reported on very serious allegations of inappropriate behavior by former Chief of Defence Staff Jonathan Vance towards female subordinates. And I wanted to know, what do you make of those allegations?
First of all, obviously, the new Chief of Defence Staff, Art MacDonald, has announced there will be a review into this specific situation. But I can say that from the very beginning, this government has made it very, very clear that everyone in this country, particularly working for the government, particularly working for the Canadian Armed Forces, deserves a safe and secure work environment free from any harassment. That's why whenever allegations or reports are brought forward to this government, we always take every necessary step and follow the full procedures, including all the strengthened procedures that we've brought in over the past years.
Just to follow up on that, multiple senior government and military sources have told Global News that they knew of the concerns about inappropriate behavior by General Vance for years. The Privy Council office was made aware of concerns, but didn't receive, they said they didn't receive any information that could have enabled further action. Yet, despite all of that, a senior government source told you and your office you were unaware, they told us, that you were unaware and your office was unaware of these concerns before they were reported by us at Global News. I just wanted to know, how is it possible that this was not on your radar? And do you consider it a failure that you were not informed of these allegations, given that they involved someone so senior?
Obviously, we take all of these allegations or any allegations around misconduct or harassment extremely seriously, which is why we've strengthened the processes in place in government, and every step of the way we follow those processes to the letter. It is extremely important to move forward on ensuring a safe work environment for everyone in this country, and the government will continue to do everything we need. Nous prenons extrêmement au sérieux le droit de...
We take the rights of every single Canadian, the right to work in a safe workplace free of harassment. We take this very seriously. That's why we have implemented measures upon arriving in power to prevent this type of harassment. When there are allegations, our government always takes the necessary steps and follows the procedures that are in place is to ensure that there is a follow-up. With regard to this specific case, I can say that the Chief of Defence Staff, Art MacDonald, has asked for a review of the situation.
Prime Minister, Chris Najikoti, CTV News. Yesterday, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Procurement Minister said that Canada took the second best option by buying vaccines from countries abroad instead of making vaccines domestically. Can you tell us why all the major pharma companies rejected making vaccines in Canada?
I think we all understood that the need to get vaccines to get through this had to be the absolute priority for all Canadians and for our government. That's what we focused on. That's why we signed more deals with more different companies than just about any other country for more doses for Canadians than any other country. Now, at the same time as we were signing deals internationally, we also made investments to stand up domestic capacity, similar to what we did with PPE, but obviously the lack of pharmaceutical production capacity in Canada is something that takes a little longer to rectify, and that's why we made investments as of last summer in production facilities in Canada. But ultimately, Canadians expect to get effective vaccines as quickly as possible, and that's why we cast our net extremely wide with both international contracts and domestic investments. I know everyone is looking forward to getting those vaccines into their arms as quickly as possible, and more precisely into the arms of their loved ones, particularly elderly Canadians. That's what we remain focused on. From the beginning, we said we'd have Canadians' backs. That's exactly what we're doing on vaccines, on income supports, on the borders, on support for the provinces, on everything that we're doing. We're going to get through this together. We're working every day to get more vaccines to Canada, and we're very much on track to those 6 million doses by the end of next month that we committed to last year, and to having everyone vaccinated by September.
Question inaudible. Answer. I know that other ministers will be here for the next press conference. Thank you very much.
All right, that is the Prime Minister of Canada today giving us an update on his government's response to the pandemic.